37 introduces two new binyanim, nifal and hitpael. When we look closely at the Hebrew words nifal and hitpael, we learn a lot about what these binyanim are. So let's take a closer look down here. The binyan nifal is characterized by the following. We have a noon prefix in the perfect and participles. We'll get introduced to participles in lesson 42. Here's an example, nishmar. The root is shamar, to guard. You have the noon on the front, and it is nifal now. This can be a little challenging when we come across first common plural imperfect. The noon, this can look like a first common plural imperfect because we added noon in that case. But there are some distinguishing factors that we'll look at in a future lesson when we put the nifal and the imperfects together. So the noon with the hierarch is added to perfects and participles. A dagesh in the first consonant of the shorish, and a hierarch under the prefix in the imperfect and the imperative. So when we're looking at imperfects and imperatives, the noon of the nifal is assimilated into the first root letter, and we see that dagesh there. So that noon has been squeezed in to the next letter. We've seen this in some other verbs that we've been working with. The root letter, if a verb starts with a noon, that noon sometimes disappears in imperfect and is squeezed in to the next letter. Well, here the nifal noon gets squeezed in to the first root letter in the imperfect, as well as the imperative, because something has been added on the front of both of those. There's a hierarch underneath the prefix for the imperfect and the imperative. We see that hierarch as well up in the imperfect and the participles. So that vowel is left behind, even though the noon has been pushed into the next letter. So look at the word nifal here. Nifal, the noon and the hierarch, ni. We add that ni onto the front of the perfects and participles. That ni is still there in the imperfects and imperatives, except the noon has been pushed into the first letter. We still have the I vowel there. So when you think nifal, think noon, or that N sound, being added on the front of the word. The binyan hitpael is characterized by a dagesh in the second consonant of the shorish, or the root, and a patach under the first consonant of the shorish, as well as by the following. So look at the word hitpael. We have a daget. Well, the dagesh is lost because the ayin is a guttural. But you see the patach underneath the first consonant. That's what they're talking about here. The hitpael is also characterized by the hit prefix in the perfect, infinitive, and imperative. So look at these examples. Hit ka bates. The hit is added onto the front. Look at the name again, hitpael. The hit part is added onto the front, hit. Ka bates. Patak is characteristic of the hitpael. Again, hit pa, just the way we pronounce the name of this binyan tells us a lot about how it is formed. The ah sound is found here. Ah, hit, ka, bates. And then the doubling, the strong dagesh right there in the second root letter. This is similar to the peel. The peel takes the dagesh in the second root letter, and here we find it again. Hit, ka, bates. Again, so this is he gathered together with others, and this is the imperative form, formed exactly the same, hit, ka, bates. The ta following the inflectional prefix and the imperfects. So what we have for the imperfect is the perfect form, except the hey is lost. You see, the hey is lost. The yod of the imperfect is added onto the front, and the hey has just simply been squeezed out. Everything else is the same. You can look at Appendix C for a full paradigm of the nifal, the hitpael, and the hitpael binyanim. As far as the meaning goes, our authors here write, as with the other derived binyanim, in many cases the meaning of the nifal and hitpael cannot be systematically derived from the same shorish or root and the active binyanim. So the meaning of the verb in the nifal or the hitpael should simply be memorized. So while the hitpael or the hitpael and the nifal do nuance the meaning of any particular word, it is not consistent, it is not systematic, so we're going to learn it on a word-by-word basis. When we introduce or introduce to new words in the grammar, in the Devarim Chadashim lists, all the verbs will be marked with a Q for call, with an N for nifal, with an HT for hitpael, and so forth, so that you know when you're memorizing that word, you're memorizing the meaning in the specific binyanim that is being presented in the vocabulary list. So the hitpael and the nifal binyanim are introduced in lesson 37. The nifal adds ni onto the front of the root. The hitpael adds hit onto the front of the root, as well as the ah sound. And there is a dagesh, even though we don't see the dagesh spelled out here in hitpael, because the ayin is a guttural, and gutturals don't take dagesh, as we know. So lesson 37, we can learn about two new binyanim, nifal and hitpael.